In this video, we will be learning how to factor quadratic trinomials where the number in front of x squared, or the a value, is equal to 1. So factoring is the reverse of multiplication. It's like you're figuring out what they multiplied to get their expression. So it's like working backwards. So a quadratic expression is usually written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. The factors would look like two parentheses where you're multiplying things together, usually x times x, because that'll give you x squared, and we have to figure out the numbers that are multiplied to get those other values in the expression. Again, right now we're only focusing on problems where it begins with x squared, so there's no number in front of x squared. Here, if you look at an example, we have x squared plus 6x plus 8. The factors would be x plus 4 and x plus 2, because if you were to multiply this together using FOIL or distributing, you would get x squared plus 6x plus 8. So our steps are to set up our factors first. Set up your parentheses with x in front, because x times x is x squared, and we're figuring out what they multiply. Then you're going to make a list of numbers that multiply to that c value, and you're going to look at your list from there and try to figure out which pair from your list could either add or subtract to give you that b. You can worry about the positive and negative signs at the end. And then once you're done, you just complete writing your factors. You're good to go. So here we're going to factor x squared plus 5x plus 6. So my first step, again, is to set up my factors beginning with x, because x times x would give me the x squared. From there, remember this is our a, b, and c. So we're going to set a blank, or we're figuring blank times blank equals our c value. Here our c is 6. And then blank plus blank equals our b value. Here our b value is 5. So always start with the c, then the b. The reason we start with the c is because then you're going to use that number to create a list of pairs that can multiply to give you that. So here, when I create my list of numbers that multiply to 6, I like to start with 1, because sometimes students forget that 1 works. So I would start with 1 and 6, and then I could do 2 times 3. Now I'm going to look at my pairs, see which of those will give me the number 5. Here, 2 and 3 give me the number 5. So I can put these inside my factors now. Now if I check, 2 times 3 is positive 6. 2 plus 3 is positive 5. Since this works for both blanks, it makes both of them true. These are going to be the numbers I use in my factors. So since it's a positive 2 and a positive 3, we would put plus 2 and plus 3. So my factors are x plus 2 and x plus 3. A quick check you can do is multiply those last numbers. 2 times 3 is 6, and then 2 plus 3 is 5. Basically, you're checking that your blanks worked. Now, just to make sure you really understand what this is, again, factors, you're figuring out what they multiply to come out with that expression. So if you were to check, you could actually multiply out x plus 2 times x plus 3. X times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x, 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 3 is 6. So there, if you combine your middle terms, it comes out to x squared plus 5x plus 6. You don't have to do that check all the time, but again, that's just to show that your factors are the parentheses that you would multiply together to get that expression that they started with. Next, let's try x squared minus 4x plus 3. So I'm going to set up my factors here, beginning with x. Remember, we're doing that because x times x is x squared. And then I'm going to set my blanks equal to c. So this is my b, this is my c. Blank times blank equals 3. And blank plus blank equals negative 4. So remember, you start with times, and that equals c, plus that equals b. Now, I'm going to show you something that I want you to remember. If you look at the sign here of the c, if the sign of c is positive, that means both your numbers are going to have the same sign. So here, since we see a negative in the product, that means both our numbers are going to have to be negative. Okay? So now I'm going to make a list of numbers that multiplies to 3. The only numbers that would work would be 1 times 3. So I'm going to go ahead and put 1 and 3 in my factors. And now I can worry about the positives and negative signs. Remember, we said both are going to have to be negative. So if we check, negative 1 plus negative 3 is negative 4. Because when you have the same signs, you add and keep. And if you multiply negative 1 times negative 3, it becomes a positive 3. So this works for both. So since I have negative 1 and negative 3, I need to make sure my factors show a minus 1 and a minus 3. Next, we have a squared plus 9a minus 36. This time, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to begin with a, because a times a would be a squared. Then I'm going to set up my blanks. So blank times blank equals negative 36. Blank plus blank equals 9. Now, remember, your C sign tells you the signs of your factors. So if your C actually has a negative sign, then your factors are going to have different signs. So one will be positive, one will be negative. So I'm going to set that up here so that I know when I do my numbers later, I'm going to decide which one's positive, which one's negative. So that C is very important, again, because it tells us our signs. You also use that C to make your list of numbers. When you're making your list of numbers, don't worry about the positive or negative till the end. So I'm going to come up with a list of numbers that multiplies to give me 36. I would start with 1 times 36. Then 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. If you're having trouble coming up with your list, you can actually divide to get those numbers. So you could say, okay, what can I multiply 2 by? Well, let me get my calculator. Let's do 36 divided by 2. That gives me 18. So we'll do 2 times 18. Now let me try 3. If I do 36 divided by 3 on my calculator, 12 comes out. So I'm going to put 3 times 12 on my list, and so on. If you get a decimal, then that doesn't work. So for example, if you were to do like 36 divided by 5, that would come out to 7.2. You'd only want whole numbers on your list. So if it doesn't give you a whole number, exclude it from the list. Now that you have your list of numbers done, you want to see which ones adds or subtracts to give you your B. So I'm going to look at these. Which ones can I add and subtract to get 9? Well, I cannot add 1 and 36 to get 9 or subtract. For 2 and 18, I would get either 20 or 16. For 3 and 12, I would get 15 if I add, 9 if I subtract. So 3 and 12 is a possibility. For 4 and 9, I would either get 13 by adding, 5 by subtracting. And 6 and 6, I would get 12 and 0. So the only one that works here is 3 and 12. And remember, we said our signs were going to be opposite. So there's going to be one positive and one negative sign. And we're going to worry about that after we fill in the blanks. So I'm going to put a 3 and a 12. Here, focus on the B, because that's going to tell you to which one will be positive and which one will be negative. So since my B is a positive number, that means the bigger number has to be positive. Basically, the sign that your B has is going to be the sign of your bigger number. So 12 is going to be positive, and 3 will be the negative one. So now if I do a check, negative 3 times negative 12. Sorry, that should have been a positive 12. So negative 3 times positive 12 is negative 36. And if we do negative 3 plus 12, those are different signs, so you subtract, and you get positive 9. So my factors are negative 3 and positive 12. So here, I can put the positive 12. And here I can put the negative 3. Doesn't matter the orders that you write your factors. You could also write it a minus 3 and a plus 12. It's up to you. Both will mean the same thing. We look at our last set here. We have n squared minus 8n minus 20. So I'm going to begin my factors with n, because n times n would give me the n squared. And then I'm going to set up my blanks. So blank times blank equals negative 20, and blank plus blank equals negative 8. Again, I'm going to look at my sign for C. Since it's negative, that means I'm going to have different signs. Remember, if it's positive, you'll have same signs. If it's negative, you're going to have different signs. So I'm just going to write that so I remember for later. One will be positive, one will be negative. Now I'm going to make a list of values that multiply to that c. Don't worry about the negative right now. So list of numbers that multiplies to 20. I can start with 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and then 4 and 5. And I want to see which of these I can either add or subtract to get 8. Well, if you look at 2 and 10, if you add them, you get 12, so that wouldn't work. But if you subtract them, you get 8, so that does work. So I'm going to fill in 2 and 10 in my blanks. Now that I have that filled in, remember they're going to have different signs. So one of them has to be negative. Remember, your bigger number is always going to match the b. So here my b is negative, so my bigger number has to be the negative. So now if I check, 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. 2 plus negative 10 is negative 8. Because when they're different signs, you subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. So I would have a positive 2 and a negative 10. So my factors would be n plus 2 times n minus 10.